Rev up your engines! Today we're going to talk about a relatively unknown car, the Pontiac Vibe. Why they made them, why they don't make them anymore, with one that's got 230,000 miles in it. This is the Vibe GT. This is my wife's Toyota Matrix. Basically, they're the same car, with one exception. The Matrixes were built in Cambridge, Ontario by Canadians, where the Vibes were built in Fremont, California by American Union Labor, which was the only factory that Toyota ever had that had union labor. Now, why are they called Pontiac Vibes? Because it was a 50-50 deal between Toyota and GM. They were building cars in the United States. Toyota saw the handwriting on the wall. They were probably going to have any kind of import tax on Japanese cars, so they made these in Fremont, California. Now, before that, it was a GM factory. People were drunk on the assembly line. They had horrendous quality. So, Toyota and GM got together and they started NUMMI. Yes, it's a real thing. It stands for New United Motor Manufacturing Incorporated. It doesn't exist anymore, but it did exist in the past. And Toyota allowed these union workers to stay, work in the factory, but work under the Toyota brand of how to build cars, where they care more about quality. They build them correctly. And as such, these are still excellent cars. Because, why, there's a Toyota Celica engine. Because this is a Vibe GT. This has the Yamaha designed 4-cylinder engine that puts out quite a bit of horsepower. Now, the Celicas, they had a lot of problems with them blowing up. Guys were revving them too high. They didn't have the right amount of baffling plates on the oil pump, so if you cornered like a maniac, oil would go to one side, the oil pump would suck air, and the engines would blow up. Every single customer I've had with the Toyota Celica GT that had one of these Yamaha design engines blew up the original engine and ended up putting other engine in. One guy went through 3 separate engines. He liked driving them fast. But does this look like a race car? No, it's a Toyota Matrix. Built on a Toyota Corolla chassis in the NUMMI factory in Fremont. They made Toyota Corollas too. They made a lot of vehicles there. Realize, NUMMI in Fremont produced almost 8 million of these Pontiac Vibes and Toyota Corollas. They're excellent vehicles, and of course, you can get them dirt cheap. This has got 230, he bought it with 180, and he paid a whopping $800 for the vehicle. He did have to get framework done because started out in Norway, Maine, and ended up in Massachusetts. Salt water takes its toll. So he had problem with the control arms going. So he had the control arms replaced. But you can see, other than superficial, the frame itself is still pretty solid. Now, it's nothing like my wife's Matrix. That thing is totally solid. But then again, it came from Texas, Arizona, and now it lives in Tennessee most of the time. So it doesn't have any rust on it at all. And being a GT, this has the original alloy wheels. You can see they're pitted, but they work. They hold air. You could repaint them if you wanted. And after all, the wheels on my wife's Matrix, those are aftermarket ones that came with the car. The guy in Arizona originally owned to put those on. And they're really nice alloy wheels. They've held up really well. You got to consider that these are 15 years old now, and they're still in excellent shape. Even though they're dirty, I need to clean them. So if you are looking at a northern version of one of these Pontiacs, look for rust and corrosion. If it's all rusted and corroded away, you really don't want to buy it. In this case, subframe is okay. Control arms, the blind bolt got screwed up, so he just had those all replaced. And the thing is, these are just Toyota Corollas in disguise. You can get parts everywhere. You can get parts from overseas dirt cheap that are perfectly fine, because almost all the parts on Corolla type vehicles are totally interchangeable. This is made in California. They're still well made. Check it out. Still got the original alternator. Now, he doesn't know if the AC works. We'll have to try it later because he's never even tried it. He doesn't care. Aside from the Pontiac badge, different plastic, and some different body parts on the car. You don't see this on the Matrixes. That's all Pontiac stuff. It's basically a Toyota. As you can tell by just looking at the dash. Here's the Vibe. See the instrument panel? And here's my wife's Matrix. See the same instrument panel? So it's dependable. Gets good gas mileage. They can run basically forever. It's just a Toyota Corolla in disguise. Originally the Toyota matrices were called Toyota Corolla Matrix, and they just shortened it to Toyota Matrix. Knowing how lazy Americans are, I'm surprised they didn't just shorten it to Toyota Ma or Toyota M. Who knows? Now, when GM went bankrupt and there was a big recession, they stopped their participation in the NUMMI, in the New United Motor Manufacturing Incorporated, so they shut the whole thing down. But interestingly enough, now the factory is where they build Teslas in California. So they went from horrible quality GM cars, 80s and 90s, to pretty well built Japanese cars, but when the deal fell apart, now they're making poorly built Teslas. What comes around goes around. What do they say? You know, the circle of life? Well, the circle's back at square one, making poor quality vehicles in the Fremont, California plant. Rather ironic there. This has a cold air intake modification, which I'm not a big fan of. And one of it broke, so it's got a tin can inside there taped up so it doesn't suck air, but it runs good, so. And as you can hear, got an exhaust leak. Turns out that the gasket between the exhaust pipe and the front of the muffler has disintegrated, so it just needs one part. It's not that big of a deal. He's having a hard time finding it, but you can find him online. And if you wanted, who really cares? You could just weld it together if you wanted. I mean, it's just an exhaust system. Now you're always going to hear a little clacking on these engines. That's totally normal. But in this case, it's more the fuel injectors clacking just from old age. But it still gets almost 30 miles a gallon on the highway, so it's nothing particularly wrong. Now, he knows it's running a little bit rich. I put my scan tool on, but I'll tell you, he's got to fix the exhaust first, because if the exhaust has that big leak, that's going to affect the readings of the oxygen sensors, and that can make it all go squirrely. So we'll hook up our computer here. So he plugged it in, it's setting itself up, and we'll do an all module scan. And we'll see, the only thing that has problems is the power chain control module. So let's see what that says. It says that the fuel system is running lean. We don't care about the evap. We'll start it up and look at the live data. In the live data, you can see it looks a lot like my wife's matrix. Everything's pretty much the same, even the vents, except this is a 6-speed standard transmission, so you can zoom around a lot faster. Got the same handbrake, same chairs, same console, same back seat. Let's look at the live data. Everything's got good colors on it. But as you can see here, the data's a little squirrely. The short-term fuel trim, it's adding 19%, but the long-term, it's subtracting 25%. Now, truthfully, that makes no sense at all. So like I said, he's got to fix that exhaust leak, put a new exhaust donut on the pipe going to the front of the muffler. Because with a leak like that, it's going to affect what happens with the oxygen sensors. And they're obviously squirrely, because there's no engine that's going to be adding a bunch of fuel short term, but subtracting a bunch of fuel long term. It makes no sense. But when you have that going, it's going to affect everything crazily enough. So I would fix that first and pray that that cold air intake isn't incorrect for the vehicle. Personally, I keep these things stock. I never change them. You start messing with that, you start messing with all kinds of stuff. It runs good enough. It's not like it runs horrible. It is running. You can see now it's stalled out just sitting there because we idled for a long time. It's obviously squirreling around with the fuel mixture. As you can see now, the short-term fuel trim is 0, and the long-term fuel trim is subtracting 25% fuel. So now, after we restarted it from it stalling out, the fuel trim is perfect. It's 0. So you got to fix the exhaust leak before you do anything. See, look at that. The short-term fuel trim just went to its adding 19, and it was 0 when we restarted the car. But really, as you can see, it's idling really smooth. Let's check the AC. He said he's never tried it. Well, I like trying things. He's never put any refrigerant in it, and lo and behold, the compressor's not turning. So I can just about guarantee if you filled it up with refrigerant, it would start working again. All cars lose some refrigerant. I had to put refrigerant in our 07 Matrix for the first time ever last year. I emptied it out and filled it up, and then it was a lot colder, so some of it leaked out. So you could add that in, but he doesn't care. His girlfriend cares, but he doesn't care. Windows rolled down perfectly fine. Aside from the different body panels, it's the same car as the Matrix that's made in Ontario, only it was made in California. It was made with union labor in the United States, but it was a Toyota GM mixture, so they did a lot better than the factory where they only made GMs before in Fairmont. I even had a customer bought a GM from the factory when it only made GM vehicles, and it made this horrible rattling noise, right? My grandfather's like, I wonder what this is. We figured it's coming from under the seat. the driver's seat. You know what they did? They put a golf ball inside the frame. And when you cornered, it'd go gloom, gloom. We cut a little hole and got the golf ball out of it. Of course, the owner was furious. He said, "The swines of GM put a golf ball." Well, that's the kind of work that went on in that place when it was just a GM factory. And now, like I say, it's a Tesla factory, so maybe the world's gone back making cars that the quality is not so high. Tesla has non-union labor, so you can't blame it on the unions. He's not using unions. Now it is making noise because the grommet on the exhaust is falling off, but look, it doesn't shake at all, even though it's got all this mileage on it. These are relatively bumpy riding cars. Here's the big lump here. It's not going to drag because it's high up in here, but that's the one problem with the Matrixes, and the Vibes are the same vehicle basically, is they are relatively rough driving vehicles. You hit bumps, you feel them just like on my wife's Matrix. Now, the handling is fine. They handle really well. They have kind of a motorcycle style suspension in the back. So these things corner really well. I wish mine was a 6-speed. I'd have a lot more fun driving it around. Because ours has a smaller engine, horsepower wise, and also has an automatic transmission. So let's see what this thing can do. We'll get out in traffic, and it's got some good zip, makes a nice sound. Not racy, but hey, you can definitely keep up with traffic and still get good gas mileage. And this one sounds like a race car because it's got a hole in the exhaust. But that is making it a little bit squirrely, so it needs to be fixed so the fuel trims go back to normal. Hey, still, it's a fun, zippy little car to drive around in, especially with the 6-speed. But I do have to say the noise would drive my wife insane. She likes her quiet Matrix. So here we have it. The Toyota Matrix, Pontiac Vibe, that Toyota and GM got together for a short time, but then said, hasta la vista, and now Teslas are made there. Hey, if you can get one of these for 800 bucks, snap it up, if only for history's sake, because just like the Toyota Corolla they're based on, these things can run forever. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.